Alright, I'm gonna wrap up some cleanup that I had started earlier this week before I took a couple days off the stream. But before I get to that, I just wanted to share the beginning of what I've been working on for the last couple of days. I just did this little write-up. This is for Mr. Fourth members only right now. It's a first draft, but it's everything that I've figured out so far about this new C scripting technique and how it's working with data sections and the symbol set and all of that. And there's a lot I still need to think through about how I want to present these ideas and describe them. So it's not ready to go out to everybody yet, but it's under development, and so it's available to members. And that this is a good time to throw in my reminder that you can go to mrforth.com/membership to check that out if you'd like to see more of this and follow it up close while it's being developed. That's how you can see it in more detail. Now, that's what I've been doing for the last couple days, is pulling out all that C scripting symbol set stuff into a new project that I can focus on in isolation. But I went and started doing all of that right in the middle of a week. There was going to be a week of cleanup, and I got so much cleanup done on Monday that there wasn't a whole lot left to do. But I did say that there was enough that I should take at least another day, and this is sort of already Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So this is a chill, going to be a chill cleanup Friday again, just hanging out for the next hour or two, tracking down anything left to do with the RPG simulator cleanup that I didn't finish before. Alright. Let's get into it. Just get a little workspace set up here. We'll do a total naming pass. We'll first focus on this section and then do a total naming pass, I think. So what are we dealing with here? Proto from ID, tile hook from clause IDs. From ID, yeah. So are all of these in order from there to there? That's the question. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Let me adjust. Is this better? All I did was be a little more careful about the mic placement. Okay, cool. Okay. Well, I'll also try to speak up just a bit more. I'm looking here, and I think... Yeah, there's no easy way to boost it in OBS beyond where it's already at, so I just need to stay on it a little better. Um, okay, so yeah, I want to figure out what all of these are and what they're doing, but also are they in order? Proto from ID, ID from proto, proto from name, proto set name, proto from literal, proto init from literal, proto init, proto set name, proto from name, proto set name, proto from name, proto from ID, hook set clause IDs, hook from clause IDs. Okay, yeah, they're all in order. Proto from ID, ID from proto, and proto from name, proto set name. I don't like that name at all, but all of these, what are they? Index the array. What are we using this for? I think I like it that way. Now, that's about right. Now, proto set name is the beginning of a long set of these funny sounding setter getter patterns here. Tile ID. Yeah, so set rule is weird. I think what I like better I like something about this brain state is the type and then set the hook for it. So this is yeah, I mean this is saying set the this is more like name set proto than proto set name, right? It's like this is the thing. If the brain state is the key, then I say set hook. These are all just bad names. What I have is I mean, I think the best I can think of would be to get very literal with it and then try to make it short afterwards. So like proto. Right? This is setting the name to proto, and then to get the proto from the name. Set name to proto. Map name to proto. Okay, so all of those, it's a little out of order here, but things like tile proto set name follow suit and do the same exact confusing thing. I want these to be like map name to tile proto and live under the construction. Map name to tile proto. Tile hook set clause IDs. Try map clause IDs to tile hook. Map clause IDs to tile hook. Brain set state set hook. Map brain state to hook map brain tile to hook. pattern to rule, brain tile to hook, map pattern to rule, string map set. So all the string map sets are right here now. Proto set name map name to proto. Map name to tile proto. Tile hook set clause IDs. Tile hook set clause IDs. Tile hook set. Have I had the word clause misspelled this whole time? Probably. Looks like it's fixed now. Tile rpg map clause IDs to tile hook. Set rule. Map pattern to rule. Map clause IDs to tile hook. What's wrong with it? Map. Let's go to context. Where is it? Why is it not defined? Map clause. Map blank to blank. Name to map clause IDs. This one is misspelled. Brain state set hook. Map brain state to hook. Map brain tile to hook. Okay, so there we go. That's the renaming of the mapping functions. I'm starting to get an inkling of a pattern here that I want to finish. It's a little hard to fully wrap my head around what I might need to do to get there, but what I'm seeing is I want to be able to make a lot of these maps, and these maps tend to relate to data that's available in the scripts, right? If I go to my C scripts here and look at these things, these are doing things like mapping names like this name to the tile proto, which is essentially the symbol created by this, right? And so this does some of the work of automating things, but my desire to have maps that, or dictionaries, or whatever you want to call them, for quickly finding these from some index space, like the space of strings, or fixed length tuples of IDs, in some cases like these and these and these, and then an array of IDs in this case. In fact, this case is even more interesting. It's not just an array of IDs, but it's an array of IDs that is normalized, right? We're trying to evoke a sense of the multi-set by thinking of it as it's an array of IDs that's been sorted first. Essentially, it's a sorted array of IDs, so that there's no distinction between two arrays if their counts are the same ultimately. So um yeah, I think that this could be automatable, right? We could come up with a C scripting way of making it so that after this is done, there's something like an automatically declared map, and that the relationship between this declaration and the map can be specified in the declaration of the map's existence itself, and in the fact that this ties itself to that map, right? Something like that we could do, like make a map, and then when this does its thing, when we define that there are tile scripts, we would also the reason it gets hard is that I want no, it's doable though. I can definitely make a map uh be I would just collapse it to the point where instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things that are doing a loop over an array, or each of these is looping over a different symbol set and sticking the symbols into a dictionary, right, somewhere. And well, each of these are just the things that do the sticking into the dictionary, but they're a part of that whole loop in each case. So what's really going to happen is I'm talking about eliminating the need for 6 of these by making one loop over the set of all of the maps, and then having a way to hook those in automatically so that as these expand, as the number, what I'm starting to think about is how I'm going to be able to expand to having lots of these different types of scripting, because I think that like the rule scripting isn't really going to generalize to the rules for every scenario. In fact, it might be that each scenario is going to come with a small system of its own rule type and its own pattern type in different ways or something, right? I think that this is a local solution to the encounter description and isn't going to be the same pattern system that I'll use for other pieces, right? So in order to support having more and more growth of how many of these there are in the system, I need to start thinking about, like, well, look at this. This is a very common replicated pattern that scales in complexity with the number of these things you make. It would sure be nice to take that piece off, because that's another price you pay every time you want to build a new one of these. You add a new map and do all this wrapping. It's too heavy. It's going to be too heavy to do it that way every time. So it's got to get better. But in the meantime, let me keep going through these unsorted functions. This is why I like to do the like sorting work. I think it's worthwhile because in addition to leaving your code in a just easier to understand and more pleasant looking state, it also forces you to confront the structure of things that you've been ignoring, because you have to look at everything again. Okay, so proto from literal is a construction function, right? Init from literal is so what is this? Proto from literal says that you put in a literal and it returns A newly constructed proto. Right, so this is one of the... Okay. Right, and what's proto init about? This is actually part of the construction process, right? Okay, let's see. Um, proto init from literal. Okay, so what's happening is I'm saying here's a proto 2 that's not initialized and a literal. So this is not really part of the interface. And who calls new proto from literal? Who calls it? Well, no one calls it because wasn't named that before, but if it was named that, the caller is init from literal. Okay. Okay. These are all parts of this. This is the only thing we're actually trying to implement for other people to deal with. And all of that's going to go... trying to decide if this is the name I want for it. I kind of don't like there is the separation between construction phase APIs, which are the APIs I use to initialize the context before I start um, running simulations with it, and then there's the code that actually gets used in the simulation scripting and implementation, which is like all of this, right? All of it. Um, so I kind of think this split is going to grow over time, and that this rename will get renamed eventually, but it might not be the right time to rename it because I just don't see the full split and where the lines are going to want to go in the end. So just keep an eye out for a future renaming pass where the construction phase stuff and the simulation phase stuff gets more fully split and the divide cleared up fully. Okay. So these are just the tile proto functions. Right? Tile protos, and their names are tile proto from name, tile proto from ID, I feel like we might as well just keep this pattern going, huh? ID from tile proto. Yeah, I think that's how it has to be. Tile proto from ID from tile proto. That's the new one. From clause IDs. Right, so that's just the read on the map. So this one's a read on a map, read on a map. These ones are different. These are wrappers around the... Right, that's so interesting. Read on a map, read on a map. Array. So these ones are wrappers on the symbol sets. And There's something interesting about that because there's going to be a concept of taking the set of all the symbols in the game or in the simulation or in the program and paring it down to this finite collection that is present in the current simulation. Right? If everything's present, this won't do anything. But I think a lot of times the point of this is to keep a library of pieces, and then to simulate them in small windows together and see their effects that way. Not always, but that window, when I say small, can mean we're taking 10% of the elements together or something, or that we're taking, it could be very constrained, or it could just mean that it's not the whole thing. But what's significant about not taking the whole thing is that it means I'm going to be able to cross optimize the hooking between tiles. And so it raises a question of like another thing you could imagine doing is subbing in different tiles like as variants. So you could say there are two different tile scripts, let's say, for your poison effect in your RPG, and you can imagine then that what you want to do is have other things which refer to poison work the same way, independent of which poison tile is in place. So other, tiles that say things like give +3 poison to the target of this move. Well, that just does what it says. It +3 is the poison on the tile. The different tiles then will go on and respond to that fact of being incremented differently, right? That's the point. The So this wrapper here serves, the real purpose it serves is to allow for a dispatch that will be sort of intermediate, right? There will be such a thing as saying I want the poison tile, but we've got to have some way of slotting in different tiles proto in the same slot for poison, and I don't know how that's going to look or work in the version where it's just pointed straight at the original list of symbols. I think we might have to make a copy, and I mean, for either, I might just have to introduce the concept of a second indirection. Like I might look at the tile proto for this poison and see that it's an indirection to a different tile proto and have to do that every time. But no, you could definitely imagine, like, if you're going to optimize, what you do is you say whatever tiles are actually in play, you create an array that's maybe a copy of the original, but you're going to resolve all the things that are sort of indirections that you can just bake into the lookup. That's what I'm kind of imagining. Anyway, um, anyway, so there's the renaming of everything in that section and the sorting done. I'm gonna say construction stuff at the top, logging stuff after construction stuff, and before these other sections. Okay, so there's logging stuff, and then protos, tile protos, players, moves, brand moves. That's something different. What is grant moves exactly? Right, this is wrong for sure. So what's wrong about it is this code here doesn't make any sense, right? This shouldn't be the way this looks. It's very funny that I have to like figure out what to increment from this to this. It's because I have these things that I want to treat as counters, but I also want them to have a separate set of IDs from the tiles. And so what I need to do is just accept that there's going to have to be some kind of feature on the tile board, or maybe something separate from the tile board that's like the resource counters or something. I'm not sure. It really is the same thing as a tile board. It might just be a tile board compiled with a different tile index space, right? All that the tile board really has to do is be an optimization of a set of tile protos. Maybe move kinds can be optimized as counters. Maybe it's just better to make a simple integer counter array. I don't know. There's so many ways this could work out. Um, mm, um, I'm planning that next week I'm going to work on the tile board. I think I'm going to put this in on the same line of like things to work on. Condition clauses, tile board, tile hooking, index with scopes. Let's say look again into the move counters situation. So that's grant moves RPG tile action versus RPG move kind action. Okay. Yeah, so for cleanup, I want to finish doing a naming pass over context here. Maybe we'll also be able to... I think this would be the one thing I do today. The other thing I've been thinking about is... I was saying this earlier. I think that I was a little too ambitious. I was excited to run into this idea with the encounter system of having a pair of states that you use. So it's not a single state machine, but it's a pair of states that are symmetrical. Each independent state has the same flowchart essentially at the level of the rules, right? They all have the same. It doesn't matter if you're in slot 1 or 2 is the point. The places you can go with this rules are the same. Other differences between the two parties will obviously dictate where they can actually go according to the rules of the game. But if you went in with the equivalent, all other things being equal, nothing here introduces bias between one party and the other, unless there's a bug that's doing that. So the point I'm trying to get at is this is cool, but not everything in the game is going to work as a pair of states dancing together like that. Sometimes it's going to flow in a different way. And I need to kind of open up to the possibility, I think, that this is the wrong structure and that therefore these machine states are more of a local structure to this combat system, this encounter system, and not a final solution for how I'm going to rule script everything. And so I'd like to spend some time modifying this to make it a little less baked in. But there's also the second issue of just I'm sick of having the thought that there's so much work happening just to permute these guys back and forth. And maybe that's silly compared to everything else going on, but it's never going to be more than 2. And so really the only question is if you're running one of these rules where you're in 2 different states, like fight, flee, or flee, chase. If you're in one of these states, all we got to do is figure out some way to access the 2 that match this pattern. That's so easy. That's just an if. If on a Boolean of if we need to flip or not, we'll have a pair of accessors, and it'll all simplify down. There won't be a chase context and a combat context. There's some things to sort out here that I didn't get quite right, even on the last pass of the rule system, but I'm pretty confident that this rule system is roughly correct for encounters, but it isn't a general system, and that actually a part of what I'm going to want to achieve, like I was saying earlier, is a different type of script for each um, flow that I can think of, like this encounter flow, but not all of them are going to have the same structure, right? And I'm going to need some ways to like nest them, states in one being postponed and continuated by states in other ones. So all of that is going to have to get revisited. The shallow thing that I was thinking of doing for cleanup is just to not do the swapping here. But now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it, it's also like there are so many other pieces of the system. Like the dispatch of these is also rather expensive. The whole thing is just a lot more ambitious about how this would generalize than what I think is likely to actually happen. The generalization I chose is just silly and making it overcomplicated. So that's a cleanup, and maybe that's a cleanup for next week. That's a big one, like a full day, couple hours, 2 streams each. Couple streams, 2 hours each, I mean. So that might be the kind of thing I'd do Monday, but I'm also looking at that tile board next week, so maybe it's possible they could both happen. But I do want to do one final pass to finish this naming scheme pass before I wrap up for the week. So I did the major to-do I had sitting there. This is what's happening next week. Can we push this rule? This is for the rule cleanup part for sure. So yeah, let's just go through and do some sorting and organ and naming on the rest of context.h. So that's the part we already did. Player from entity. There's still no real player system yet because I haven't actually ever set one of the entities to have a player and started working on this. So this is all still for pretend. I have some code that calls this, but that's not done. Moves, RPG move push. Okay, so this is like a moves data structure, and sometimes what I like to do is if I have a moves data structure, I don't have to put it into a separate file. I can just put it into a separate block, right? We can go like RPG move types and say that a fixed move, a move set, and a move loose, and a move set loose, and a move limit all sound like things that belong in the move types. We do that because we need to know about entities to talk about them in the moves. But they get defined later, closer to the... But do they have to be? That's not so clear. It could look like this. Okay. So with that, what I can then do is go like, okay, if they're going to be sorted like this, what that's going to mean is that I can also have context functions be the beginning of context, but there can be things like move functions here, which actually are just the isolated data structure functions like this that have nothing to do with context. So there's everything to do with it that has no connection to context. The only reason I don't love that is that it does kind of wrongly assume that this is actually going to stay independent. I think it's more likely going to become more baked into the context, because I'm thinking that what's going to have to happen is some optimization work regarding how this sort of stuff gets allocated, and possibly I might even want to, at the limit case for the fastest possible simulation speeds, fully no-op away some of this computation, like just make it not necessary, and replace it with a higher performance dispatch to the bots than anything you can do by creating movesets and shuffling them around. We'll just have to play it more fast and loose with the communication process, because the cool thing about the bots is that they can know, they don't need an interface. If they're dumb enough that they don't need to inspect the space of possibilities, but instead can just be written as some fields that need to be filled out regarding what they need to observe, and then some fields they fill in regarding what decisions they make, and then some internal state. Like, it could be set up to run very fast if we don't have to pretend like we're rendering out to a human player, right? So if we want to put this thing in hyperdrive speed mode so that it can go as fast as possible in simulation and gather lots and lots of data, we are going to have to strip out something as high level as this move set altogether. And so just thinking about it that way, and thinking about the various levels of optimization I can imagine throwing on move sets, I don't think that I want to have them become a separate data structure. I in fact think that they're going to need to fuse in deeper to the context and become a thing of the context managing a small handful of moveset resources very adeptly, and that should be doable. And also have some kind of trick for eliminating their need entirely built in at very little overhead for the flexibility, right? So anyways, I think that's how that should be. Grant moves is the one we just remarked on possibly wanting to change. So I think we'll leave all of that the way it is. With that said, I don't mind this change in the type structure here. I mean, it's true that these are more context-like types, and that these are sorted out now in a way that is true to the, like, the layering of one thing on top of another. The entity relies on knowing what about the existence of players, the yeah, see, I think we want to eliminate that too, so that when we're going on full bot speed mode, this won't be taking up space in the entity system, because really we could get down to, like, this is going to go when the tile boards come up. And so all that's left to do is to figure out how we want to simplify away the bulky tree stuff, really. That's going to be it. So we'll definitely need this and this. No, we won't need this either. All of these go away. This goes away. We'll basically just have a bunch of kinds. Well, we'll have one thing here for the tile board. And then, yeah, we want an optimized entity tree structure. Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Fixed move set, move loose, move set, loose, move limit. Yeah, that's just our move stuff. Okay, okay. So I like this sorting of things. Since that exists, it kind of implies a sorting to the functions that follow too. And these are definitely out of place. Players and then entities. And they still bear the names of the very old lingo where I was calling these sim entities because I thought there might be different types of entities that I wanted. And I've kind of done away with that thinking now. This is the only thing that really took the name entity, luckily. So these can just drop that. Nice. Boom, boom. That makes sense. Oh, that's another thing that can happen. If I have a subset, right? If I know in one simulation that a specific 5% of all the tiles in the game or in the code are actually in the simulation, they're in play, then I can optimize the tile boards based on what's in play too, right? So I think what's likely to happen is that when I pick a subset, what I'll then do is probably create a re-indexing. And so anywhere where the original index is hard-coded, there'll have to be a mapping from original indexes to re-indexes. So that's one layer of indirection to anything like on the tile board. You'll take in your tile ID, you'll map that to the for that particular simulation optimization, like the optimized the accelerator for that context, right? What you would do is you would take that accelerator and say, okay, here's the tile ID. It should have a map, since this tile ID is in play, to an index of all the information about how to access that, right? It's basically a field. Is it a counter? Then it's here. Is it a flag? Then it's here. Is it is it a counter and a maximum variable that are like two separate counters that go together, right? And that should all be available right there. Off of that ID. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing that I would wish I could do would be to take the code itself, right? Well, what I picture is I want to take the code and scan through it again, scan through its relocations, and swap in the remapped IDs, right? If I have a subset of the code that it should be closed, this is talking about 5% or 10% of the tiles in play. What I mean is you pick some number of symbols to bring into the simulation. There's a dependency system where some symbols refer to other symbols, right? And therefore bring in more. Anything that gets brought in is in play. Once we know everything that's been brought in from the roots that we put on the table to begin with, they bring in all their dependencies, then we have a certain set of things in play. I would then want to take that subset and all those references between them that I use to find them, I would want to simplify them down so that since there's nothing you can reference that is outside of the closed set you found, right, none of the code is going to reference anything outside of the set. That's what I mean by closed. It is a set of elements who contain references, but all those references are to things that are already inside the set. Therefore, you don't have to go outside the set to finish the definition of anything. Then, whatever that subset is, it should be possible to reconstruct the web of interconnections in both the code and the data structures to a re-indexing of all of those symbols that is minimalized, right, is compressed down to just the ones that are in play. That would take a rewrite of the code before putting it into, before the simulation starts, based on stuff that is only known about at the point that the simulation is configured. And that might be a little farther than what I can do easily in the short term. But the next best thing would be to create an indirection table so that the cost is one extra level of indirection, since you could never bake it in, but you could still optimize the tile boards, and you could still optimize the hooks, the cross hooking structures of the tiles. Okay. So what's up next? Um, what's next? To answer your question, so the question someone's asking is, are you trying to have tiles contain additional metadata about things they can do without adding significant data to the tile struct itself? Kind of. It's not about wanting the tiles to have additional data about what they can do. What I want is an acceleration structure. So the tiles have they have these clauses, these things called clauses, and each clause is a thing that that tile does. It's some code that occurs when the tile is present and a particular event and other set of circumstances comes true. So, for instance, this tile sleep spores that I have on screen has a clause that says when the holder of this tile rests, and there are no other restrictions, just when that happens, this tile increments by one, right? So it's a move, and when you use the move, you lose it for the day, and when you rest, you get it back, right? Um, that's cool, but if you look at some of the things I want to be able to do, there's rest, there's use. These are simple events. There are other events like the one here on protect. When or protected, when the protected has a holder tile decrement event on the heart tile. So what this means is if the heart tile in particular gets decremented on the character who also holds the protected tile, then this responds. And when these respond to a tile decrement, what ends up happening is we have to do a scan across. We take the fact that the heart tile is the one that's getting decremented, and then we have to look at all of the tiles that are, we loop them basically. We visit each tile on the holder in order to see if any of them have a handler for this moment. So that's an amount of work that scales by the number of tiles. But what's interesting is a lot of the time there might not be a protected tile in play. There might not be anything hooking the decrement of heart. Now, heart's a case where there might often be something hooking the increment and decrement of it because it's so central. But you could imagine that in a lot of cases we'll find that there's a tile that isn't hooked. But the whole point of a hook system is if you do it in a closed way where you only get to use a hook if the receiving end of the effect opts in, it's closed off, then what I could say is, okay, the heart tile will broadcast an event whenever it increments or decrements, and that's how I used to do it. But that means any tile that doesn't opt into hooking its own code explicitly by putting a few lines in to opt in will never get hooked, right? And the downside to doing it that way is, one, if you want everything to be hooked, you end up having to write lots of these permissions and you end up with separate events for each one. And so it kind of becomes just a maintenance problem. But also, it's fixed. Like if I ship the system and then 6 months later I have an idea for an expansion where if only I could hook this one tile that I didn't already hook the decrement on, I could do it, but I skipped that, and so now the two versions are incompatible because I have to change old tiles in order to get new ones to work. So I would prefer a system where I can hook any tile with or without permission from it, right? I can just say I hook this, and then that's great, except how do you make it go fast? Well, the only way to make it go fast will be to cross-reference which things are in play together. So it'll no longer be about saying if I have this clause, or if I decrement the heart, that I scan my holder for all the tile decrements. There will be a system of scopes in play, a scope structure, where there will be a scope for the holder entity as one of the scopes. And I'll be able to say, in this scope, are there any effects for decrementing the heart? And if there are, all of them will be ready to go right there. But most tiles will be able to immediately say, don't even bother to check, right? When you go to decrement me, it'll say, nobody hooks me at the holder level, nobody hooks me at the any level, nobody hooks me at the ally level, so you can just 3 flags check, skip over all any additional there doesn't have to be a hash lookup. There doesn't have to be any kind of additional digging in. You'll just find out that it's not there. And then in the cases where it is there, the data structure will have already indexed all the handlers you need to visit. So instead of a linear scan across all tiles, it's just a visit of each call you need to make, right? That's the goal of an accelerator data structure. All the information is there to do it at like lightning speed. It should be possible. It's just a matter of creating this sort of cross-indexing data structures that can be a little daunting to get your head around at first, sort of databasey, but fast and on the fly all the time, right? And the way that it will be able to pare down and apply these optimizations is if you have all of this data to pre-process and know which tiles might hook each other in the first place. Okay, so I am doing renaming. Let's get back to that. Entity new, attach, detach, player from entity. That's good. Entities, players. I think this is not players. I think this is more entities. Moves we looked at. Grant moves is special. It goes and pushes something onto the right, it's the tile counter thing. We talked about that. Okay, decisions. I think the naming here is fine. I do think some things are going to change about this over time. This is one of those things like the stuff I was saying about the slow dispatch through the moveset system. Well, this is a piece of that problem, right? This is where movesets are getting constructed and passed to players, and that's fine for when we want to support a human player playing against a bot. But we're going to want to not actually have to construct the moveset, which means there's something wrong about this architecture still, because I need some kind of cutoff point where I can turn off the highly symbolic over processing and switch to hyperspeed bot brain simulation mode. Okay, makes sense that brains come down here below decisions. But I think they should actually come after rules too. Decisions come before rules because of the fact that we use decisions to express rules, but I think that might be a mistake because rules are a data structure. Well, we also said a lot of this is wrong, right? Like some of this belongs actually sorted with the encounter rules, the combat rules. Rules and patterns, I think, are not generalized. Yeah, and so all of this is actually so that's to do for another time, but let's see the names. Yeah, I think the reason they're sorted together and the reason why I don't mind this, we should probably come back and change this actually. That might be. Yeah, I think that's a priority high enough to do it immediately next week. I already have that in the to-do list as clean up this data array system. Let's add another note here. See rules. Also, see rules in rpg.ctx.h. Okay, brains, subcontext. Okay, I think we're gonna rename here. There's also this, which might get visited before too long, maybe including on Monday now, because I'm starting to think I might tackle this, trying to sort this into the combat system. It's going to be a toss-up. I'm either going to be doing this or the tile board. I'm not sure, but they're becoming both. The tile board is going to be hard. This is going to be... This is going to be not hard, but it's experimental and slow, like, you know, slow iteration kind of thing. So it's going to be time consuming and probably not something I want to cram into a single day now. But anyway, rule subcontext push. I think we're just going to take out the word rule on these. These are subcontext. These are subcontext related concepts. Yeah, and I think I want to change the subcontext to relate to the entire encounter system instead of to each rule as it is right now. So all of this is about to change to... Cool. Let me take a quick break here. Set up a little be right back sign. And when I get back, I will just keep on trucking through that context header file and doing some more revisiting things and seeing what everything looks like. All right. Be back soon. All right. We're getting there. Let's see. I'm looking for context.h today. So yeah, this is getting a redo once rules gets a redo. We're learning, we're learning. Okay. So move operators, move operators, state operators. Right. Okay. Let's start with brains. It's just brains feels more like protos and tile protos in a way because it's the mapping. It's just accessing the map from the symbol sets. So actually sorted up there with them. Right. So yeah, like there are things like this that is just the optimization question here is how do you make this go fast? And the answer is, well, when you go and look it up, what you want to have is that when you, and from this thing's perspective, what you want is when you look it up, all you put in is a tile ID. And what comes out is either an empty array or it's an array of states. If it's an empty array, then you can use it default. You're good to go. If it's an array of states, then you have to check that state against the state you actually get. You have to check each state in that array against this ID that you get from the character's state, right? And the match will tell you the hook, right? Well, the match, if there's a match, then the hook either way comes from the thing you get back, right? So you put in the tile ID, back comes a hook and an array. If the hook is non-zero, then you do the test I just talked about, right? It can all be done right here in line from one quick query on one index instead of on 4. It just has to be prepared from the original structure in a different way. It has to optimize a different flow. Okay, so Yeah, I don't know. I guess this is like a tile proto operator or something. Um, Move operators, moves gather from tiles, and that comes with a recursive part. And this is using the gather arena system. So there's this whole thing where, yeah, yeah. Then we get the players from moves. This is definitely the kind of thing that needs a revisit. Okay. So the move operators just include the ability to gather moves from the context, the ability to extract the set of active players from the move set, which is totally bananas, but it's what we've got, and then the ability to shuffle and run the moves. This thing about discard KO characters does not feel like a move operator, though. Registers, tile proto operators, state, event. Where does discard KO characters belong? It's definitely the fic. This is all stuff that we use when writing rules. Okay, well, let's see. I think that discard characters. Discard KO characters. Right. Because of the fight clear and fight apply. I think I want to change all of that. That's just an overcomplication of how I'm phrasing game rules right now. I think it's all going to simplify both in the code and in the logic next time I do a game design pass, and that's just this is where we've exited the realm of code that really has to do with the core engine structure and is a lot more about the game structuring. But I don't quite know where the wall is yet. Like there's things like this gather from tiles is closer to the engine side of things, right? I mean, it's not generic. It's definitely for an RPG made out of characters with tiles on them. That's all assumed in, but that's what the whole engine assumes in. What isn't assumed in anywhere is like when character entities are getting removed from play. That's getting implemented as if it's not a rule of the engine, but a rule of the game. And it might be that what rule I choose for the engine is going to matter in such a way that you can't make certain games if I build it into the engine, but I don't know how to avoid building it into the engine, given that it's like complicating things to do it this way. So I don't know. These are like the difficulty of design, the boundary of the gray zone, and I just don't know where that wants to go. I think ultimately I want to be able to say once I've got a collection of moves that I know I want to run, this thing that shuffles and runs them should include everything that needs to happen, including applying damage and then ultimately discarding KO'd characters, right? That should always be automatic and basic to the idea of like applying a set of moves. Apply moves should just be a thing I can do anytime, anywhere, so that I can build rules around that, include like what kinds of moves will be available and what kinds of environmental or like contextual modifiers there are to the meaning of things before and after, and the timing of when things happen and how many actions you get, and all of that is set by the rules. But what it means to run the moves and then handle the effects maybe needs to get built in deeper or something, right? It feels just weird and complicated to keep track of, making sure I call this at the right place logically or something. Anyway, and in a way that's still just a game thing, right? I'm saying that the game is phrased in a complicated way, I guess, but it would ultimately be that the game has a core idea of running a set of moves to update states of things that are in play. Anyway, state operators. Whatever. Event operators. Okay, run tile hook is in the wrong spot. Run tile hook. This is a tile proto operator, actually, if you look at it. And who uses a helper like that? Ah, I see. So again, you can see that what I actually seem to want is a kind of data structure where I would actually just be using 3 keys this time: tile ID, event ID, and event tile ID. So all of these would still be keys on this thing, but what would come back would be an array of state IDs again, right? Because the fact that I have to do 2 searches is still extra, like it is in the other case. Now, the fact that there are 3 IDs in this key and 1 in the other means that it's not the same map, and you can't accelerate both equally. Yep. And again, this is an example of how this works. The things that come back, if they're going to be, it's usually going to be either no states, meaning it's the generic case where it doesn't matter which state you're in, you can do it, or 1 specific state. But it can be 2 or multiple, and whether or not something is in play might then allow you to shrink the set of things that comes back to check against there. Right? tile hook. Yeah, so event on tile, event on character. All of these are fine the way they are. This one is just for using it, right? What if we actually bake that in? Event character use tile ID. Use tile proto. Then the point is you don't have to pass in an event ID or event tile ID because that is stuff you use for events other than this one. This one is always going to be event this used with tile ID 0 because he's just using a tile. Event on character. Right, so the only one that's event on character proto is event character use tile, and then we can drop these two parameters. I think we can also drop the event data now that I think about it, because that's also always going to be 0 in a situation where in a situation where we know we are using the this used, because you when you use a tile you just use it, you don't, there's not other data to that event. Okay. The guy who got protected never got hit in that run. Now you can see when that doesn't happen, to get more HP. 7, 6, they still have the protected. 6, 7, 8, they lost it. Nice. 6, 7. Cool. Alright. Back to the renaming. Tile ink. Why is that interesting? Okay, tile ink is interesting because this is where we have the increment event. Okay, so with that in mind, this is all like there's no longer going to be character or tile entities on characters because tiles won't be entities, so this will be gone. This might still exist, but it'll only exist as a wrapper around something more like this, right? So we'll have something like this. You'll be able to put in a character, get out its tile board, and do these, and maybe we'll keep these as wrappers since these are equivalents of these. Or maybe you'll just use the tile boards directly or something. Um, but like these will be baked in more deeply at the tile board level. There won't be such a thing as incrementing or decrementing a tile entity since tiles again won't be entities. It'll just be this part upwards. So to make sure that that makes sense, I'm just going to take a look. Tile ink should only be getting touched by character tile functions. Tile ink and yeah, we don't actually want to allow that anymore. Right, like this kind of thing is going to go, and what's going to happen is this is going to be character tile ink, this character, and then RPG tile sleep spores. Right, you just have to name it. Character tile deck. Right, we're not going to reference entities at tiles as entities anymore. But you can get the character this character holder. There's still this thing about binding who it is. So if this is used, then the user is the one on whom we decrement the sleep spores, not the holder. If the holder rests, then it is the holder itself, right? Using a tile is special because of the fact that you can use a tile without having it. But if you use it and have it, then things like this apply. If you do get some kind of way like the wake up move, that's where I have a move where you can use it without having it on your board. And that is I mean, I'm doing it that way because I don't want to have to manually add a bunch of like default things to everyone's boards and carry them around as a data structure when I don't even really mean for those tiles to be equipable, right? They shouldn't show up on the tile boards at all. They just are because I want to use the tile to describe a move. It might be that what needs to happen is that I need a move script, and that this whole thing about using a thing is actually wrong, that a tile it should just say that it contains a move script that it can use in certain conditions or something, right? The structure here might disappear out of the tile, and I might say that moves are different. That seems unfortunate because I'd like the interface to be able to display the set of tiles. I'd like the code for displaying a set of tiles or displaying a tile board or displaying a set of moves to all kind of be similar looking, because I mean, it just makes it easier to learn the interface and to see the connections between what things are on your character versus what things you can do, right? The fact that wake up shows up when one of your allies is asleep makes sense. But it doesn't have to be interpreted as being permanently on your tile board. It's just showing up as one of the moves, right? And so the tile board is setting up the set of moves, but moves are also pointers to tiles that you want to run a use on, is the way it's structured right now. Hey, Kyra, welcome. So, let's see here. I think it's about done, actually. So, that's those. This tile, I think we're going to try to eliminate that before long here. Let me see. How was I doing on eliminating tile ink? That one's safe. That one's safe. This one's the declaration. Character tile ink. Character. Okay, this one is still wrong. So we would want character tile ink. Character RPG tile protect +1. Right? And then tile deck needs the same treatment. Tile deck, decrement. Here we go. So character tile decrement, we need the character, this character, RPG tile protect. We grab this character and we want to do, we can't grab the counter off of a, right, we're supposed to go tile counter equals RPG tile character tile count context character tile ID protected. So we want to look at the tile counter without touching a tile entity. And then we decrement the protected tile as well as the damage amount by the amount we prevent, right? Okay, so Back to the context H. What else we got? That's referencing this tile. So that's fine. That's fine. Holder. Okay, we'll track down holder. Discard this. We'll track down discard this. We'll discard this. I don't actually know how I would replace that. Is that, who's calling that? So if we are sleeping and someone, yeah, so this could just be character, because we know, so we can do RPG character, tile, deck, context character, RPG tile, sleep by 1, right? This is the same thing as setting it to 0. Okay. So discard this. Holder rests. We just need to get the character. We get this, and then we set protected to 0. And we discard at 0, right? So that's just how we discard, right? Now, it might end up being also that it's like you want to have this as a separate concept once the API is good. Okay, so this discard this, I mean, is just getting defined. It's not getting used. We can drop it. What else we got? This holder thing. Are we using that? Yes. So let's just replace these with this character. They mean the same thing everywhere. I wasn't sure if they would or not. Like, this is a spot where they don't mean the same thing, but I still think they should do this, right? So whichever character is using the attack tile, it's their counter that we look at when they use it. The other way this could work is if you could say that you're using someone else's attack tile, but that's not actually how anything works. When you say you're going to use a move, all we provide is the character entity that you are using the action with, and the tile ID that has the use clause that you want, right? So this character, there's not even such a thing as knowing which tile you're using in the end, right? Like, it's built in there right now in some cases, but ultimately it's possible to use a tile move without the tile even being an entity already. So there's no such thing as this used tile having its own counter. Right. Hook signature is so that I can create a hook and then use it in 2 places, because I don't have something like this yet. Right. Ultimately, the smart thing would be if I could do this. Right. So this would be a different way of using the script clause macro. Instead of binding to a declared function, I would predefine the function and just assign the hook. Like, I'd assign this into the spot of the hook. But for now, we got this. Cool. Okay. That should be it, I think. I think that was the last one. Yeah, so that one's out. And we still don't need this tile anymore, do we? No. Great. These are not a thing. That's still a thing. Yeah. We're going to be able to simplify that away, though. This entity is overcomplicated at this point. Let's go do that real quick. I think that's a good last move for the day. Entity, we're going to have this character and this party. We may not even need this party at some point. I don't know yet. But we'll do it for now. So this is context, this party. Oops, regs this party, I mean. This party, this character, we don't set this tile. This party, this character, no tile. This tile. party, this character no tile, this party, this character no tile, this party, this character no tile, this party, this party, regs. Everything works. Excellent. Looks good to me. All right, I think that's pretty good for a quick cleanup pass, doing some naming and eliminating the sort of duplication and redundancy and old concepts phasing out and all that. It's pretty nice. The things that are left are big systems that need big replacements. So that's what I'll be getting to next week. Thanks for coming and hanging out. And again, if you're seeing this here at the end of the stream, I'd like to remind everyone, you can go check this out now. I've just, if you're one of the members at mrforth.com, then you'll be able to check out this new repository I've just posted in the members section called C scripting, describing a lot of this technique that I've been developing with the symbol set and the basic ideas of how it works. And I got a little example up and running with that, so you could check that out. And it's also in my code base if you want to, if you ever, I don't know if anyone is currently relying on this code base. I know the public one's a little different. It's like a couple years older now, but there's also a symbol set definition on my code base. If you're using that, you can update to it if you like. So I'm gonna sign off, and I will see you all around the internet later. Bye.